Round of applause, please. So in this session, we want to discuss on what it takes to build and scale tech ventures in India, tech companies in India. And I think there's no better exemplar of that than Tata Consultancy Services, which in a very different period in India obviously made a very significant contribution to the growth of the country, to the growth of a new industry. So let me begin by asking Sir, Mr. Ramadorai, in that era, there were so many other challenges and there were so many difficulties of like building a business. So what was the driver, the motivation for the young team of TCS to actually keep pushing the envelope and attempting something which had never been attempted?
Well, good evening to everyone. First of all, congratulations to you,
Thank you, sir.
Rajeev, for organizing this great annual day. I'm sure you and your team will go places. So you have the necessary passion, right attitude, and wanting to make a difference.
Thank you, sir.
I think we all had a choice to settle in the US, get a green card, and live happily ever after. Wonder when you lost the job, what do I do next? Or when you said when the dollar is equal to so many rupees, I'll come back to India, and that never happened. So some of us took that plunge to say that we went for an education, got some work experience, time to come back and do something within this country. So the drive to go and learn something and come back was the motivator to do. And the group, namely the Tata Group, was one of those institutions which was welcoming anybody who wanted to come back and make a difference, not only to their lives but also to the communities at large and also to the organization they were a part of. I think there were only 2 or 3 jobs which we were told made a difference in India. One is either you join the government or you become a doctor or you join the Tata Group. So I chose to join the Tata Group. That was the motivator to say that do something for the country, come back and make a difference, and make sure that the time was on your side. You are not asked to perform every day, every quarter, or every year. So I think those were the enablers.
And so in your autobiography, the TCS story and beyond, we have learned how academic partnerships were key to it. How forming the right relationships with, including at that time, the first computer science department in India at IIT Kanpur, and many other of the IITs, TCS proactively built those partnerships. So what was the important role played by that of supporting the ecosystem in that way, which of course many of the other IT companies also came to benefit from that ecosystem building which TCS did. So if you can shed some light on that.
I think even today, we are getting back to building the ecosystem, which means from an idea to a research in an academic institution, do the translation on the ground to make a product or a service becomes a lot more connected than in between where we lost it. Academic institution existed in isolation. The corporations thought they can do it themselves or didn't do it. And that change is again we are witnessing a lot. That's why we see a lot of activity in terms of startups, in terms of the academic institution themselves setting up startup parks around them, and the incubation or the startup people making use of that very, very effectively. So I think the ecosystem creation, we all believed in the need for academic institutions. We were all members of the IEEE, which was the body of exchange of professionals together, and local chapters which we used to attend every week, every Sunday or every Saturday or whatever it is, share the learnings which you had without any fear that some idea was going to be shared. So being a part of the academic institution or professional bodies is absolutely a must because it gives you theoretical foundations, it gives you publishing, writing articles, or understanding the research and whether you can do it to take it to the market. So the rotation within a company also, we practiced a lot in TCS where before I got into sales or marketing, the fundamentals of doing programming, being a part of the project management, program management, or being a part of the research and development itself, before we went into finance or sales or marketing functions. So the foundations or the gut was we are all engineers and an engineering mindset with a can-do attitude which made a big difference, and the group was very, very encouraging of that. And our bosses were exactly with that kind of a mindset. All of them had an engineering degree, engineering discipline, mathematics as the foundation, and the rest is what we learned, or brought in people with those expertise, but basic background in engineering.
So on that note, if I may bring in Tarun, so Ather obviously was incubated at IIT Madras, and in that period, one of the very few hardware companies in India actually probably to come out of the IIT Madras ecosystem or the IT ecosystem. So what were the kind of points or the supports which Ather received early on from that ecosystem, which one could say today that was very definitional and crucial for the kind of growth and progress of the company?
Yeah, so see, in our case, we were not in incubation because we were necessarily looking for technology collaboration or inputs. We were not in that wave, let me put it that way. We were, I think, either the first or one of the first startups incubating. So this entire connection was not yet established very well. What we instead got in return for incubating there was peace. Let me explain a little bit. When we got started, actually before we got started, we spent a solid year in the department without incubation as two ex-graduates, two ex-students. We literally were just hanging around in the department using somebody else's ID, which the department professors were kind enough to know but overlook. We spent about 9-10 months sort of doing that. And then we took incubation, and then we spent a year. And in these roughly 2 years, we didn't do anything that would be considered in the Bangalore ecosystem as starting up. IIT Madras ensured, given its reasonable alienation at that point, that we couldn't attend any startup event. We couldn't go for any startup meets. We were not exposed to the concept of pivots, traction, any of that stuff. And in retrospect, I think that was deeply required in our business because it hit me much later once we moved to Bangalore that what we did in the first 2 years was an incredibly exceptional thing to do, which is take your sweet time to decide what to do. I think there's this massive rush among startups, definitely today and even back then. You decide somebody's a co-founder over 2 dinners. You get started with some idea, you will see what becomes of it over 2 months. And a lot of the internet-enabled businesses, that's a good idea. But for many other businesses, like what we were trying to do at Ather, you wanted to have very high conviction for your business, you wanted to have very high conviction on the product, which I realized much later was so hard to do outside of that cocoon called IIT Madras. Like we were so massively cocooned, we were still basically like students, but starting up. So we're like, yeah, this year we will decide what is the vehicle we want to build. Next year we'll try out different architectures before we commit to building a vehicle. I think all of this was impossible, and I think we got an ecosystem back then there that kind of encouraged that. That nobody looked and said, what are you guys doing? Like, it's been 9 months, you still haven't started building. Like, no, we're taking long walks, we are building a lot of models, and we're still trying to figure out if we should go for an active BMS or a passive BMS. We really are thinking this through. We're not trying to rush into it. I don't think after we left IIT Madras and that cocoon, we've had that phase in our lives yet. In a way,
So it gave a certain creative space to.
it just gives space. I actually feel like Ather's been running on the fumes built on the first 2 years. Like it almost feels like we again need to go back and hide somewhere for another year to think through the next 10. But what we got in those 1 or 2 years was just, at this point, not repeatable.
And that's really interesting. So now from the early phase, let me, sir, ask about TCS had a run of tearing growth. After you were personally there, I remember reading in your autobiography of how you set up the US operations as the resident manager in New York, and the challenges and travails there of like actually going as an Indian company in the 1970s, winning customers. And then, of course, through the 80s, 90s, TCS went into a different trajectory on the foundation of that great work. And managing that growth, team building. So, sir, if you can shed some light on how to achieve that as a young startup. There are many startups here, there are many founders here. So, team building in the early stage obviously is one of the most crucial things to do for a founder, for a CEO, for the early executives. So, what is the right way to approach it? How does one choose people?
No, I think there's no magic formula. It has to come as a way of life to build teams which naturally evolve, which means I know my strength, I know your strength, you know your strength, you know my strength, he knows your strength, etc. So how do you extract the best out of each of us? And that's the role of the leader. Leader in the situation could be a project where the program manager, the project manager is the leader. Tomorrow he may be working for somebody else who is the leader. So that the roles and responsibilities keep shifting depending upon the opportunity and depending upon what you need to do. If you have an open mind to do that and grow more as a family rather than as a hierarchy, then it is possible to build teams, indeed excellent teams. Second thing which we did, every single project was done in TCS. You would capture first the initiation of the project. What is the project? What is the problem we are trying to solve? What is the kind of commitment we have made to the client? And who are the team members? And what is the background? At the end of the project, in the middle of the project, of course, there are a number of reviews either with the client or within your own team. You capture that knowledge, and every single project that has been done by TCS has been documented, captured on the learnings. So if tomorrow I bid for another project for a similar client, my whole mind works on the basis of if I did this project with 100 man-years over a period of 12 months, 15 months, whatever it is, can I compress it to 50% based on the learning, which means you are automatically using the assets by capturing them, and we built a very digitized system as we went along.
So good processes and good.
Absolutely. People, process, technology, and usage of that, and creating a digital platform which keeps growing in terms of what all you can do in the platform. And we reach a stage where that platform itself is a marketable product. So you got to look both. And I think people who stayed with TCS, and most of them, the leadership stayed with TCS because of this single connection. There's a learning, there is a development, there is a performance, and there is a reward. And the reward is not for an individual, but the reward is for the organization, and then the group, and then the individual. So compensation system was also built that way. So I think we are still as connected as we were when we joined as trainees. Not only with the professionals alone, but the families as well. And we encourage this kind of a behavior, and the families have played a very important part in this whole journey of excellence. So even if a person leaves an organization like TCS or any Tata company, they will not be critical of that company. It's only of what are the learnings and why I moved on, because I wanted to try something different. So that's cultural roots. And never criticizing, and we never focused on the competitors and say that Let's focus on what we have promised and our client. Don't worry about the competitor. They will chase you. They may take away some projects from you. But if you get carried away by that and forget the market, then you are going to repent. So I think early lessons, incorporating this, behaving those behavioral traits, and capturing some of these which are necessary to capture, and then playing back through the academic rigor. That's how we built it. And research was a very critical component of this also.
That's really interesting. On a related note, one thing, when one looks at the history of the group in particular, the Tata Group in particular, one sees that in every kind of period, it has always strived to break into new industries. So it was when steel was a technology industry, it was Tata Steel. When it was chemicals, it was Tata Chemicals. Of course, when the computer age dawned, it was TCS. And now we are seeing it in electronics and semiconductors, also in aerospace. So that's a unique DNA. And I wish more corporates were like that. So what is special about Tata's? What makes them so unique about the leadership that they are willing to bet on the next industry, the next domain, and drive that change?
I think the time cycles and the willingness to push it as far as possible is very much there. And we don't measure these initiatives by what are you going to do in the first year or second year. Yes, we have a process, we have a way of doing these things. But financial, other than the input in terms of financial terms, is more important than outcomes which we want. What is the institution you want to build in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? That's the kind of thinking which we have. It's not that let's try for 5 years, if it doesn't work out, we move on and start something new. No, that's not the attitude. Second thing is professional well-being and the professionals wanting to stay and stick and then build and give them the opportunity to do it. Even today, as the scale of the business in TCS, 600,000 people working for an organization, $30 billion, whatever may be the market cap, etc., etc. Only fundamentals we look there is, are we building human capital, or our sustainable in terms of the newer areas of exploration, even in each of the individual companies which may be in a certain specific area. And then what is the kind of financials which are generated out of doing the business. Today what I find most of the businesses, the spreadsheet start with the CFO giving you a 5-year projection. I don't know what business they do. And then they say this is how the graph will go. Always the graph goes from left to right. And then you try to force a model saying that this is my company and this is what you are going to do. We never did that. CFO was the last person to make a presentation. Let the business people make a presentation. Are you doing the business? What are you committed to the client? And then the outcome is financial ultimately. But 99% even on the boards as independent directors I have seen, they only start with the financials and give justification why they did or why they didn't do. That has to change. Startups have to say that this is my passion, I'm going to sustain for next 5-year, 10-year, 20-year journey. Because the idea is too important to ignore, and the idea is what I believe in, the passion is absolutely critical, and there are people like you who may be willing to put the money on such initiatives. The only lesson is don't put money where you're going to get a quick buck and then fold the whole thing, because your reputation is also at stake. So every company of yours which you have invested in and bringing others will show over time that it was a good, or what learnings which you capture and put it in the next one. Sharing between your startup companies which you have funded also is a way of life, like this kind of a session.
So, sir, we are seeing now, obviously, there is a certain availability of risk capital in India. There is a certain access of funding and so on. So what are the areas you feel one should be prioritizing? What should entrepreneurs be looking at? What areas excite you from both a commercial standpoint as well as a strategic and socio-economic standpoint?
When we look at strategic areas, I would call it in the area of defense security is going to be a very big need, which is indigenous, India for India and for the world. Second is clean tech, robotics, anything to do with manufacturing, and manufacturing automation is going to be a big player. The associated, that's what we were discussing a minute ago, what is the kind of software that needs to go into those, the intelligence that needs to be built through the software, the downloads that are possible remotely, and managing the whole thing from a remote location very safely, securely. And then the opportunity is there to create that kind of a systems and the back end. The software that is necessary is going to be a big business. That is where in every industry it is there and everybody has to focus. Even when I met some of your founders today, they were toying with whether I should look at banking, insurance, health, etc. So all these sectors are going to be a big opportunity for us. Today, the kind of startups that are emerging, and they are also wanting to shift. If they try for 3 years and they find that it's not the direction, I want to change the direction, they are willing to do that, and money is available for that. I think when the ecosystem play and all of us are going to be a part of that journey and partnering together, that's the biggest opportunity for us. And you have to look at 1.4 billion as the market for you and taking it to the world. Secondly, the mindset has to be India and for the world, rather than let me import and do some substitution and then do that, which was the formal thinking.
Sure.
It's not right or wrong, but that's the way it is evolving.
Great. And on that note, Tarun, before we open it to the audience for some Q&A, now Ather has always taken a very R&D driven fundamental approach in building its products, and it was often antithetical to what was the norm in the auto industry as well as otherwise in the broader kind of category of startups, where the model for a long time was to emulate or copy what is working in Western markets. So what gave Ather that conviction to pursue that kind of approach? What was the driver, and more importantly, how did you create that culture in the company, especially through the first 7-8 years?
So, two different questions. On the first part, a lot of people do think that, we were very passionate about product development or R&D, so we just decided to do it. The answer is a bit more nuanced. The real answer I feel now in retrospect is that we obviously we were passionate about this, but the opportunity in our industry was this. So the real opportunity that we went after, and that's the 1 year in IIT Madras that we spent when we were meeting a lot of customers who had bought electric vehicles, so on and forth, was realizing that our industry, Indian bike manufacturers, are amazing on quality, manufacturing, scaling, distribution, marketing, logistics, supply chain. And I remember on whiteboard writing, what are the things we can be good at? You can't beat a Honda who wrote the book on quality. You're not going to go out and beat a Hero on sourcing. You're not going to beat Hamara Bajaj on branding.
Sure.
So it easily narrowed down the list of things that we could innovate on or we could be leaders on. So honestly, which is why we didn't want to start up, because it didn't look like this was a pursuable opportunity for a while. Until we kept meeting customers and we realized they wanted a different kind of product that didn't exist. We met two-wheeler companies, we met their executives, and we realized that for all the goodness that the bike manufacturers had, they, unlike the car guys, never needed to build in India. It was Hero Honda, TVS Suzuki, Kawasaki Bajaj. Every single product that became successful came out of a Japanese collaboration. So we realized, holy shit, this is amazing, because that basically means none of these guys are wired to build from scratch. They've never had a need to build from scratch. And boom, that was our big realization. We can finally put our passion to good use, because our competition is actually not good at something that happens to be something we are good at, and this opportunity exactly needs it. You can't succeed in electric vehicles if you are waiting for a foreign JV, if you're waiting for a IP transfer, because it does not exist outside. The outside world is good in cars, not in two-wheelers.
Even if it existed, it probably was not suitable to Indian conditions.
It didn't exist. I'm telling you, it is hard to believe. Like, it didn't exist and it never existed and it does not exist even today. So which is when the aha moment happened and we said, boss, it's so easy to like just say, take every single rupee and put it into product development because this is the only thing we can differentiate on and this is a genuine differentiator. So it's not like, yaar, ye hamara passion hai, iske liye hum yehi karenge. It was a good marriage.
So it was driven by a certain understanding of the market and being focused on how to differentiate against obviously very deep-pocketed, very large incumbents. And that, of course, I think continues to serve Ather quite well even today, that whole ethos.
Yeah, that's obviously remained our reasonable edge.
Okay, great. So any questions from the audience? Do we have one more mic or you can use this? Any questions? Karthik?
Thank you, sir. My particular question is to Tarun, sir. Sir, we are also the startup at IIT Madras and advised by the same professor as like your startup, the same professor advised you. And we are building the engines for these vessels which are dwelling outside. So those are the marine engines, 100% indigenous design we are working on to it. My question is, sir, when you were explaining your journey, I could feel that it is exactly the same. We were also using the same different student's ID card to move around in the IIT Madras. The question is that when we were moving around in the industry and in the nation for convincing the investors, people, government, that we want to develop it from scrap because there is no indigenous design for engines or particularly marine engines. So what was your answer to those queries? Because when we speak to them, they said that it is already there. Some foreign manufacturer is already doing that. Then what is the need for it? So what was your answer to those investors and stakeholders?
So actually that was not the question in our case. In our case, the question was not that, wow, these vehicles already exist, why are you just building them again in India? In fact, at that point, what we had proposed, the spec was the disruption. There was nobody who was building an electric scooter with that power level pretty much anywhere in the world. Like, I think BMW had a design, C02 or something at that point, and that was it. That was supposed to be a 15,000 euro kind of a scooter design, which was not productionizable. I think an indigenous design, even if it exists, can be an answer if there is reasonable argument to make that imports allow nahi honge. That the government is going to put huge custom duties on imported, like for example in our industry, if you were to say that, hey, we want to make lithium-ion cells in India, just the manufacturing, forget the design also. I think there's a reasonable argument to say ki banao lithium-ion cells. Why? Because government wants to not allow imports if possible. So you have to believe, it has to be provable that the government strategically does not want to allow engines import, or the government wants Indian companies to own the IP to do like jet turbine engines, right? Like that's a technology that, yeah, sure, Rolls-Royce can make it or others can make it, but listen, like those are defense related things. Tomorrow, certainly if US says no or UK says no, we'll be screwed. So we want to support that. There is RDI fund or YE fund. So there is a case to exist. So you have to argue on that front. Don't leave it at a very base argument, but indigenous. That is legitimate to worry about. Ki boss indigenous to matlab kal aap uth ke bolonge balti banayenge. But it's okay even if it's not indigenous. Nobody's going to stop that technology to India. So just focus on why that technology needs to be owned locally. And may not be allowed to be imported tomorrow.
And what about the risk involved into it, like this two-stroke engine, if people may realize it, it's a 4-story engine. Just a single engine would be a 4-story building size. So sir, it is very critical technology. Professor also explained the same and we have also realization of that. So how to convince the private investment ecosystem for putting their money into it? What is your point into it?
You shouldn't worry about it because you can't do anything about it. You just think about the business here. Put people who've seen scaled development processes, like people like at Ather or people who are working in these industries today, I think the only worry that people would have is not that that this is 4 stories tall. That's fine. It's 4 stories tall. There are people launching satellites also, right? And they're getting actually very well funded these days. So the size of your product is not going to be the worry. People are going to worry about the gestation period. Your primary worry is going to be how will you put milestones to fundraise. The biggest problem in fundraising for a hardware company is you go out, you have a really cool 3D model on the back of which you will raise seed funding. It will be a very cool, very elaborate, still a 3D model on the back of which you will raise Series A funding. It'll largely still be a very cool, very complicated 3D model with a very basic prototype on the back of which you will be raising Series B funding. And this just blows the investor's mind. Ki boss, change kya hua hai? Like you've gone from seed and 3 people to like 200 people in Series B. You still only seem to have like ideas and designs and 3D models. Where is the damn engine and where is the traction? So you need to find ways to give people comfort that you made meaningful progress. And actually that's the biggest problem of venture in hardware or venture in deep tech, the absence of measurable metrics. Like an internet-enabled business has very clear metrics. At the seed stage, I'm just trying to see how many people download your app. At the Series A stage, I'm just trying to see how many people are using the app. At Series B, I'm just trying to see how many people are starting to pay for this service. At Series C, I'm trying to see what kind of contribution margin you're starting to make. We miss all of this. Ather raised seed, Series A, angel seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, Series D, without revenue. I think it's the greatest. I have not been able to figure out how that happened. But the world has, the VC landscape is much better now, which is why we never got venture investments, by the way. But the VC landscape is much better. So focus on telling your milestones ka story, because that is very hard for people to understand. So focus on that. Don't worry about the fact that bahut bada engine hai. That's okay.
That was just to explain that because very less people understand about those technologies. So that was just to show the scale. And I'm very glad to let everyone know here that we are setting up our engine testing facility at Tayyur campus of IIT Madras, which is where IIT Madras has offered 5,000 square feet of land. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello. Firstly, thank you so much, Ramadorai sir, Tarun sir, for being here today. Tarun sir, you mentioned about how you took your time in figuring out what to build, how to build, etc. in the early days.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes. So you mentioned how you spent a good 2 years to figure out what to build, how to build, etc. And that really helped you to find success later on. But in today's world where technology is evolving so fast and the industries are getting disrupted so far, how should founders find that liberty to take things slow and figure it out? Just to kind of give an example, so like TCS took 36 years to go from inception to IPO. You guys took around 12 years. Now we have companies like Grow who is getting to IPO in 9 years. And the timeline for success is just shrinking year by year, right? If you don't figure out your technology and market in probably 3 or 5 years, you're gone. So how should like founders in today's world navigate these challenges?
So what we did does not necessarily apply to every industry, honestly. You are in the AI space. I don't think can afford to wait for 2 years to have a, like if you already know what you want to do, I think maybe you should just do it, right? But it depends on the founding team and it depends on the industry to some extent. In our case, I would argue the technology was moving very fast when we started. This is 2013. Tesla Model S was already becoming ridiculously successful. Tesla's valuation was going through a roof. This is the time when Tesla was, I think, $15 billion valuation. Like literally in front of us, it was exploding every day in terms of value. BYD was just going gangbusters every day. So I could argue that the technology landscape at that point also seemed that it's changing very rapidly. It was just our DNA. We just said, that's fine. Like we wanted to build a product. So we wanted to have really high conviction on the customer and the product. I think somewhere deep down we had conviction that technology is fine. We'll build whatever technology is needed. We want to have enough conviction on the product, the segment, and the architecture. But that's us, that's our industry. Also, we are in an industry where product development cycles are at least 18 months, sometimes 30 months long. Sure. So it's a different industry also. Yeah. So don't be colored by the fact that I said that. I just said that I was grateful for it in IIT Madras.
Yes. No, but because I agree that if you want to design a very thoughtful product, it takes time. But it's kind of always a battle that a founder is dealing with, that you have to move fast, get your product out fast. But at the same time, the market is not going to wait for you. There's so many other companies trying to build that same product. The technology is evolving so fast. And it has become really difficult.
No, so you need to know when the market is forcing you to move very fast. So for example, I'll give you a counter example in our own lives. Okay. 2019, we had launched Ather 450. It was not working out well for us from a financial perspective because we had minus 300% gross margins. Minus 300% for a solid year of production. Yeah. So though we had very high conviction that we can fix this, internally the confidence was vaporizing. So in 2019, we said, screw this. I think it was a mistake to build a vehicle company. We should become a platform company like Android. We will give our IP away to all OEMs and we will become like some software supplier, vagara, vagara. I switched to this business case, started pitching to VCs. VCs started liking it, but I couldn't find an OEM who would buy our technology. Okay. I couldn't give away our technology even at like $20 million. Around the same timeline, our consumers continue to love the product, absolutely love the product. So around December 2019, we got together and we realized this is a mistake. I think we should sell this product only and we should commit to fixing it. But we will have to change everything in the product because this cost structure does not work, which means we'll have to rebuild the entire product grounds up. Okay. And we'll have to do this in 8 months because we had cash for 6. Okay. Different story that COVID happened and even that cash got destroyed, but that's a different story. So we decided that in December. In January, we launched that product and we were ready to produce that in May. Wow. So you have to know when the market is forcing you to respond to it. That time you can't say, no, but I want to think through this design. I want to think through this architecture for the next 2 years. So at that point, we actually embraced that this is a suboptimal architecture, but this gets us to positive gross margins. We basically said, it's okay, let's just get to positive gross margins. This will not let us get to 30% gross margins, that's our dream. Chhod do. That is not possible with this. Let's just get to positive. We will rebuild the architecture again a few years later, which is what we did now. We launched that dream architecture finally this August in 2025. So we had to wait it out, put that dream on the back burner to just survive. So that you will have to do your own balance.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Point he made, you got to have a mindset, cash is limited, time is short, the product has to accelerate at a speed which is unimaginable. Those are only 3 mantras.
By the way, we took those 2 years when we had not raised funding. Okay, we were just 2 jobless students walking around the campus for a very long time. So take your time when there is no pressure. Once you raise substantial money, then there is obviously some pressure. Can't run away from it.